Everyone, it is Georgetown Soaps, and today I am testing a fragrance called Lick Me All Over, and I got this from BeScented, and this, honestly, in 8 years of soaping, I think this was one of my first 1 pound test batches. One of the mistakes I made when I first got into soaping was go big. I was like, oh, I'm not going to test, I don't need to test, and what I found out was I had a lot of ruined batches because the fragrances would seize, they would accelerate, I didn't know how to handle them, and if you told me to rebatch, I looked at you funny and threw the soap in the trash. So it's actually funny because I think I'm so used to making like minimum 5 pound batches, so to scale down to a 1 pound batch was like a huge, almost like a new learning curve for me because your swirls are different. And especially not knowing, I'd never made this fragrance before, so not knowing how it was going to react, I felt like I needed to kind of be conservative, don't over stick blend, things like that. So anyway, what I'm doing here, I always pre-melt my hard oils in like a canning machine, I guess you would call it. And so it's just like, I probably put, enough for 15 batches in there at one time. You turn it on, you melt them. There's a little spout that you can pour them out of. So it's always, I feel like I've always got my hard oils ready to go. And even if they solidify, like in the winter, it's a little colder, so the oils do solidify a little bit. It's cocoa butter, shea butter, and coconut oil. And so they do solidify, but you just turn the warmer on for 10 minutes usually, and it's all liquid real quick. So now I am mixing in my colloidal oatmeal and my kaolin clay. I use that in every single batch. The clay helps the scent stick in the soap. Not that I ever really have issues without it, but I do feel like it does add a little bit extra. And so I like to mix all that in very thoroughly so there's no clumping, there's no streaks, there's no spots before I add in the lye water. So now I'm adding in my lye water. And because this is a test batch, I am not going to over stick blend. I'm going to stick blend very conservatively, just make sure it's all incorporated so I don't get a false trace. Nothing too crazy. And especially with a smaller batch, you just never know if it's going to accelerate. So you've got it's going to accelerate more quickly in a smaller batch than it would a larger batch. So this time I'm just super conservative. Here goes my little fragrance. And again, I'm just gonna, kind of gently stir it in, nothing fancy. I'm gonna save all the stick blending for when I actually am adding the colors in. I'm gonna just separate out a little bit. I decided to do this one purple and pink, so I'm using the Magic Purple from BeScented and then the Pretty Pink from BeScented. The Pretty Pink is just gorgeous. I mean, who doesn't want a fluorescent pink soap in their shower? Like, how can you have a bad day when you're soaping with fluorescent pink soap? So anyway, love that color, love this purple. You can always add a little bit TD to make it lighter, always add a little bit more color to make it darker. It's just a good base purple to work with. So here I'm going to fully incorporate. Blends in really quickly because it's such a small amount of soap. And you can see I'm not stick blending a lot, but it's super, super fluid. So it's not accelerating, it didn't rice, it behaved very well. And I'm guilty of understick blending. I typically don't like to do plop and drops too much. So with this soap, you'll see later on that I probably should have stick blended a little bit more to get it a little bit more thick. But live and learn, with a test batch and with a smaller mold. I like to get every little last drop of soap out of that stick blender if I can. You can see the pink is still really, really fluid. I mean, it's almost too thin. So I'm just gonna sit here and try and I've already cleaned my stick blender off, so if I hadn't done that, I would probably go back in and stick blend a little bit more. So I'm just trying to stir it in, get it to kind of thicken up just a little bit. It's always a good thing though when it's very fluid, because then you know you've got time to work with, and you know when you go back and make the second batch, you can stick blend it more and you're going to be fine. I decided to add a little bit of TD into it, lighten the color up a little bit. Using my TD mixer bottle from BeScented. So I always have my TD pre-mixed. I do the TD, the water version of TD. I like that better than the oil. Just a personal preference. And again, I'm like waiting for this soap to thicken up. I like to clean up kind of as I go. That way you don't have less to clean up when you're done, especially now I've got time to kill. I will say those cloths, I get them in like packs of 50 from Costco, I believe. They're lifesavers. So what I'll do is, I feel like instead of wasting a whole roll of paper towels every time I want to make soap, I'll just use those, clean up. They absorb really well. They hold a lot of soap, batter. And then 2 or 3 days later, or just depending if I'm making a lot of soap, I'll just wait until I've got like kind of half of a load, throw them in the washing machine. They come out, they do get stained from the colorants, but I don't really care because it doesn't matter. I just use them for soap. Throw them in the washing machine, they come out clean, reuse them. So that's one of my biggest tips for soaping. I feel like when I first started, I went through so many paper towels. And so you can see here that I wasn't used to making 1 pound batches, obviously, so my recipe was a little too big for this mold, but I'm not going to waste any soap, so I am absolutely determined to get all of that soap into that mold. I don't care how long it's going to take me. And my go-to soap design has always been the chopstick swirl, and I got this technique from Jen at A&N Suds and Such. She does a lot of spoon swirls and chopstick swirls. It's a little harder to do a chopstick swirl in a 1 pound mold. You kind of don't know what you're going to get, and it's hard to, you know, get nice big long swirls, but you do what you can. And again, this batter just will not thicken up, so I'm waiting. The pink is super fluid, so I'm just like, I could go watch some grass grow, or I could watch my soap batter thicken up. And I am a soaper. It drives me nuts when people leave batter in the containers, so I try and get all of it out. Especially with this fragrance, I've got so much time to work with it that who cares? Let's get all that soap out. And these are my favorite spatulas to work with. I get them from BeScented as well. They're 1 piece, so like some of the spatulas you might get at like the dollar store, they've got 2 pieces, so they're harder to clean, soap gets stuck in the crevices, but these, you can mix lye with them. I think they're safe up to 400 degrees, something like that, so no issues using those, and they wash very easily. And they're kind of like a little scoop as well, so you can kind of scoop stuff out. And you can see the pink still will not set up. Super fluid. But I am determined to get all of this soap into this mold. I don't care how I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it. And I probably should have just ran and grabbed a small, like, I've got the strawberry molds from BeScented, just the little cavity molds. Should have just grabbed one of those, thrown some in there, and called it a day. But nope, we're going to get all this soap out. You can see I'm a lefty, so this was one of my first videos, so I finally figured out a better camera angle kind of at the top of the table. So in my next, you know, videos and going forward, my left hand won't be in the way as much. But here I am, I take all of my, I'm just still waiting for the batter to set up, so I take all of tools I used and those little, I guess you wouldn't call them dishes, containers, and I'm gonna just clean everything out, and then I can reuse them on the next batch. When I first started making soap, I would use different containers for every single batch, every single color. And so I'd make, 3 or 4 batches of soap, and all of a sudden I'd have 20 different containers because I was doing 5 different colors and TD and all of this. So it was just very inefficient. And then I didn't wipe my containers out right away. So then I would have to wait 24 hours for the soap to kind of saponify, and just very inefficient. So depending on what I'm making, I can usually, get away with only having a few dishes at the end that really need to be cleaned out, with soap and water. But those cups, I guess you can call them, they're ready to go for the next batch. So I'm sitting, still waiting for this soap to set up. And it's just still too liquid, still not hard enough to really do much with the top in terms of making, a little design with a spoon. So, but it's a good thing because now I know with this fragrance I can stick blend a lot more and it's not going to accelerate on me. And also I'll adjust not that I'll make a 1 pound batch of it anymore, but in the future I did adjust my recipe for the 1 pound mold so I don't have as much sitting on top. My friend Latasha from Blue Kettle Soap Works, she makes the most beautiful designs on the top with a spoon. And she's tried teaching me before, and I know I use the wrong spoon, and I just don't have the wrist technique, but I'm trying. But it's just funny, some techniques I can watch people do, and they just don't work for me, and then people say, oh, I can't ever do the chopstick swirl like you do. So it's just funny what everyone kind of their preference is. And it's still just not setting up, so I feel like I can't really make a great design on the top, but at some point I'm gonna have to just let this soap just be done. I should have just gotten some glitter and just thrown it on top and been done with it, but when you're kind of texturing the top, you just never know when should you stop because you feel like, oh, you need to go back to that spot, keep going back to that spot. Nope, gotta go back in. Gotta keep texturing the top. But still super, super fluid, so it's kind of running off the edges. I think now I'm about ready to just call it a day. Clean up the edges and then go ahead and stick the soap in the oven. I like to see POP. That's I feel like it helps the soaps get to full gel, so you're gonna get brighter colors. And then I feel like it also helps the soap get harder quicker, and then it's easier to unmold. Silicone's usually pretty easy, but sometimes it can stick. So I feel like sticking it in the oven, and you don't even have to turn the oven on. Depending on what I'm making, I'll either turn the oven on or turn the oven off. So here we are, probably a day later, all done. I do like how the top came out. And there's my little chopstick swirl / drop swirl in my 1 pound mold. It's pretty happy. It smells fantastic right at the cut. And there you have it. Lick me all over.